Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel Curly and Yarny. My name is Milena and in today's video I will be showing you how I change colors while weaving on my rigid heddle loom. So let's get started! In today's video we are going to go back in time. The reason for this is that I've been meaning to make this video about changing colors for a while, and I've been working on this video for a while also. So in total I used 3 different techniques for changing colors, and the technique I use depends on the yarn I am using in a project. So in order to show you the 3 techniques I had to do different projects and I had to use different yarns. So this is why you will see some of my past projects in which I filmed some footage of changing my colors and changing yarns, and you will also see some of my newer projects, and all of them together will make this whole video. There are 2 different moments in weaving when we will need to use the techniques that I'm going to show you today. So the first reason would be when you are weaving with one color of yarn and after a while your shuttle gets empty and you need to put some new yarn on the shuttle and keep weaving with this new yarn. So you would probably be using the exact same yarn, but you need to stop the weaving and start over, and you don't want the transition to show in where you ran out of yarn and when you had to start over with new yarn. This is the first option. The second option would be when you want to change colors because you have a weft pattern that demands that you change colors. So for example, you're making stripes of different color. So you want to, for example, you were weaving a white stripe and then you want to stop weaving the white stripe and start weaving a yellow stripe, for example. So how do you change colors on the projects that it doesn't show so much? It's the method that I use every time that I'm weaving with thin yarn. So everything that is size 8-2, so whether it is cotton, tencel, cotton linen, this is the technique that I use. So it is very simple. So let's just go and watch this. So here I'm weaving dish towels with 8-2 cotton. I've just finished weaving 2 inches with Plum. I'm going to go into the shed that I did my last pick. So this was in the up position, and as we can see here the thread moves freely, so it was the shed it was woven in. So I am going to cut a bit of yarn. I usually cut a tail of about 3 inches maybe, so it's very approximate, but that's about how much, just to give you an idea. So here it is cut. Now I've moved it around a bit too much, I just want to beat it again. So what I want to do, I want to secure this thread. I'm going to do it. I am going to go around the last thread that I can see and back into the shed, into the same shed that the pick was woven. So when I look at my piece, I can see that the last thread of my work would be this here. So I'm going to show you how to determine this. My heddle is in a neutral position. I just have to go to the farmost end of my heddle and I see that this is the thread that is my last thread. So here in this case it is in the last eye of the heddle. So my thread will always go around it to secure them. Alright, so we have figured out that this tail thread was the last thread. So I'm going to get my tail and I want to grab around it. So let me explain why. My plan is to put the threads back into the same shed and beat it in so that the yarn will get kind of squished into the same shed. So this helps that so that the color change doesn't show that much. But by doing this, I need to make sure that the thread will not unweave, because I'm doing all of those operations in the same shed. If I were to simply put the thread back into the shed, well, it would unweave. So this is not something that I want. I'm just going to put it back. So this is not something that I want. So it needs to get secured. For this, it needs to grab onto one thread, and the last thread would be the best one. So it needs to go around it. So I do both the step pretty quickly in the same operation, but I'm trying to show you one by one. So here, if I pull it out a little bit to show you more, it goes around it and then back into the shed. So by going around it, I mean just like that. this will create an edge like I have all around my piece, but I'm kind of forcing the thread to go around one of the thread. As when I weave normally, because I change shades, it just happens naturally, but here I kind of need to do it manually. So now it is around it, and I go back into the shed. So if I'm going to do it one more time, but a bit closer. And then when I put the thread into the shed, I like to put it about on 1 inch, 1.5 inch, so it really doesn't matter too much. I try to put it not too close to the edges so that it goes under and above a few threads so that it is a bit woven in, and that will help it get secured. And once I'm satisfied with the results, I can bead. So now the next step would be to attach the next yarn, because I finished weaving with the Plum, so now I want to move on with the Naturel. So I've finished my pick of Plum in the upper shed. I've done all of my operation to fix the yarn into the upper shed. So for the next yarn, I'm going to the down shed. And everything for fixing the Naturel yarn will happen in the down shed. I'm going to weave my first pick. And I leave again a tail of about 3 inches. Then I bead. And now we can work on our edge. So here again, I want to squish my yarn into the same shed that I've done my first pick. So my weft yarn is going to go around the last thread and inside the shed again, inside the same shed that I've done this pick. So it's very similar to what we just did. The last thread of my warp is again this Teal thread that is in the eye, but because I've changed shed, instead of being up here, it is down there, but I still need to go around it to secure my thread. So here I go. Just like that. So now we can see that the yarn is secured and it has grabbed onto this thread, and now I'm going to put my yarn back into the shed. Like that. So it's about a little bit less than 1 inch in, and now I can bead. And just like that, we have changed colors. So I must warn you, on the loom you might think, wow, it doesn't seem so invisible. I kind of see it quite a lot, but I assure you that once my project is finished, we don't see it as much. Technique I'm going to show you is actually one of my favorite techniques, because it is quite easy to use, but also it is the one that I find is the most seamlessly. So this is the one where I find that we see the less when the project is finished. So this is the most invisible, the method that makes the most invisible changing of yarn and changing of colors. So I use this method every time I'm using yarn that is quite thick. So for example, in what I'm going to show you today, I'm using yarn that is worsted yarn, so size medium 4, and it's also a yarn that I can split into 2, so it has some ply and I can split it. So without further ado, we'll just jump back in time and I'll show you what I did there. So let's go. I will be doing the technique, I think it's called split yarn or something like that, because we're going to split our weft yarn. Finished weaving in the up shed, and this is how much yarn that I had left. So I will simply put it out of the weaving fabric for about 1 inch, 1.5 inches. So here it is all sticking out of it, and I'm going to undo the ply. So this yarn here is 100% acrylic from Lion brand, and there are many plies in it, so it's quite easy to just unply it. So I want to have 2 somewhat equal strain of yarn. So, just like that. So now with one of the strain of yarn will simply stay hanging out here. It's when we're gonna use simply one of the 2 strands of yarn. So with this one, I'm gonna go back into the shed and go all the way through the edge. Then I'm gonna go around my last thread. So here, this is my last thread. This is in my last hole of the heddle. So I'm gonna go around it and then back into the shed. And I'm gonna make it go out a few warp threads before where it came in. So it came in here and out here, and I beat. And let's look at how I do it again, but very closely. So now I am back into the up position. This is where I finished off weaving this piece of yarn. It's already split in two, so I leave this one piece of yarn here. The other one will go into the shed like this. So here, this thread in the hole, this is my last thread, so I go around it. And so first of all, just around it and back into the shed. So here you see it is around the outermost warp thread. It's back in the shed, and I leave it stick out about, here's maybe 6 warp threads further away than the first one, and I beat. Now I need to put some more yarn in it. So I'm gonna go into the down position. I'm gonna weave in one pick, and I'm gonna leave a little bit of yarn hanging out. I'm gonna beat. Then I will stay into the down position. I will take this yarn, make it go out, unsplit it, unply it and split it, yeah. Split it, unply. I leave one of the strand of yarn just hanging there. I take the second one. I go back into the shed. Now my last thread in my warp is still in the hole, but now it is in the down position. So I still go around it, but from underneath, and I make it back into the shed and out a little bit further away, and I beat. Here we are back in the down position. So I have my shuttle, so I will weave this one pick. I leave it stick out a little bit and I beat. So here, this is the yarn that has been sticking out. So here I'm gonna undo the ply. Half of it here and the other half here, and I pull out, so it helps when I take one and I put tension in it, and then the other one I just make it turn around. Oh, I have a big piece of yarn, so it's gonna take a little while to do it. So there we go, and I stuck it out a bit more than what I did. So you see here, it's starting, the splitting of the yarn starts about here. So I leave one of the yarn hanging there. The second one, I take it, I put it into the shed. I go around my outermost warp thread, which is the one in the hole. Now the hole is in the down shed. So I go around from underneath and back into the shed. There it is. So now this yarn is around it. So I pull it gently, fix my selvage, and then I beat. And then I can keep weaving normally, and really it's not bulky at all. We almost don't see it, what we just did there. One of the reasons why this technique is so invisible is because we are splitting the yarn in two, and we are only using one of the one of the strand, and then we use it to go all the way out and then all the way back in. So this makes it double again. So by doing this, we end up with about the same thickness as the usual thread, so the thread that we used to weave without splitting it. So it just becomes the exact same thickness here when we do the color transition or the yarn transition, and this just ends up being almost the same as in the rest of the project, so this is why it really becomes invisible. So the next method I'm going to show you is not my favorite method, but sometimes this method is needed when you have thick yarn and you cannot ply or separate the yarn, which was the case in my last baby blanket video. So I'm just going to go back in time and show you what I did. So now for this technique, it is exactly that yarn and it doesn't have ply, so it's kind of one tube of yarn. So I cannot use the other technique where I split the two plies, and also I cannot, I think since it's that pretty big, I don't want to have very bulky edges when I change colors. So I'll show you a third technique of how I deal with this yarn. So here I wove 2 picks of this white yarn, and for example that if in this project I wanted to stop weaving with the white and move on with the lilac. So here's how I would be doing this. So here this would still be on my shuttle. So I am now in the down shed, so I would be weaving it completely in the down shed. And I beat, and I'm gonna do the transition while in the up position. So I still have a bit of yarn left on the shuttle, so I'm simply gonna take it off. And I'm gonna put it into my shed as if I was weaving this row, and I let it stick out a little bit, well a big bit. Then I beat and I go back into the up shed. This time I'm gonna put a bit of lilac on my shuttle. So I finished weaving the white into the up position, and now I will be weaving the lilac also into the up position. So the white ends up about here, finishes off. So about 3 or 4 warp threads before, this is when the lilac will start. And I will just pull it out a little bit too, and I beat. So now I have come to the end of the yarn on my shuttle. So I'm gonna simply take it off. And the last row that I wove was in the down shed, and I want to do the transition now into the upper shed because I still have a bit of yarn. So I'm in the upper shed, and since this is a new shed, I don't need to go around one of the warp threads. I can simply pull it in. I don't have also to do this transition close to the edge. I can do it as far away as I want to, so I'm gonna do it right here. And now I beat, and I go back into the up position, and I will do the transition with my new color, which is the lilac. So I go into the shed, and I want the lilac, the transition to be around a few warp threads. So let's see right here, I make it pull out a little bit, and then I beat. So this is where they overlap. So yes, it is a little bulkier here than on the rest of the project, but it's a very small section. So as you might have noticed throughout the video, I always keep my tails of yarn on the project. This is also noticeable in all of my other videos if ever you've seen them. So I like to keep my tail of yarns on the project until the very last minute. So I usually keep those tails on until the project is completely wet finished and dry and everything. So really this is often the last thing I do, cutting off those tails of yarn. So those are the 3 methods that I use when I want to change yarn or change color while weaving. And also this is pretty much the same technique that I use when I'm weaving on a big loom as well. I don't know if you have any other techniques to change colors and yarn. I would be curious to read you, so feel free to leave a comment down below. So this is it for today's video. If you found any value in this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. This is one of the best ways to help my channel grow, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.